Hey, the seasons are changing here in Thunder Bay, where we're switching gears from sailing on soft water to hard water. And I've got a special guest with me today to make sure all my gear's ready. So when I hit the ice for the first time, I'm not fumbling around. So I'm Mike Madge with SailJuice.com. And joining us today is multiple world champion in the DN, Matt Struble from San Diego, California. Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
How you doing, Mike? Yeah, great to join with you and everyone participating, and looking forward to the conversation.
Any ponds freezing over in San Diego yet, or?
Only in the margarita glasses.
So, I mean, you know as well as I do that your opportunities to ice boat are limited. It's not like soft water where you're going to go there and there's always got to be water. And if you're passionate about it, like I know you are and I am, you don't want to miss any opportunities. So you want to make sure your gear is all ready to go, and even before the ice comes. So I want to just start off. I'm just starting in. I've gone to a swap meet. I've picked myself up some new gear. I'm new to the sport. And I want to make sure when I hit the ice this winter, it's all ready to go. So maybe let's just start off, my skates. What am I looking at in terms of having my skates ready to go?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And I mean, overall, I mean, there's a lot of different depths to that question, but yeah, I think starting out, looking at your equipment, obviously, our time, on the ice, the conditions are quite limited, and so having everything ready to roll, when you're able to sail, your equipment needs to be ready. So, I have always set my boat up when I lived in the Midwest. I'd always rig it up, in the fall of the year, just to look over everything, make sure everything is healthy, simple things from the main sheet to, the fittings to the rigging. And then of course, runners. Good thing about runners is you can look at those any time of the year, in your garage, your basement, the comfort of your home. You don't need to be outside. So, you're checking for the obvious things, nicks, any rust perhaps that's on them, but then really down into the key points is really what kind of profile they have on them, alignment of course, and then really a matter of safety is how sharp they are. You got to have control, especially if you're new to the class. Having sharp runners is really key, and you really want someone to bounce off your equipment on, and have a buddy or somebody and just talk through that. But sharp runners, I think, are really key for everyone's safety.
And I guess especially with the early ice being black ice, you can be assured that it's going to be good hard ice. So a question for someone, say like myself, I don't have the luxury of a club here. I don't have an 80-inch belt sander. Can I do it on my own with honing it, or?
You can, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty tough haul to reprofile, runners without, having a pretty nice, sander, belt sander or something of that nature. But if the runners are in decent shape, you've got a good straight edge, a ground steel straight edge, and you can look at the profile of the runners, and depending on what the runners are, you have a good, general setup, 15 inches of crown, with feeler gauges on the end, these kinds of things. If they're not sharp or they have nicks in them, you can tune them up pretty easily with little honing stones or sandpaper on a hard pad. There's definitely a lot of things you can do without a lot of equipment.
Yeah. Now I've got one of my skates here, so I'm just thinking now in terms of feeling for nicks. Are you just the basic, just running your nail over it and feeling if there's any irregularities to the skate? Is that what you're doing?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, because ice boats, they operate on, such a low drag configuration that any little burr or nick or hang up on the steel to the ice surface is, of course, going to be induced drag. And that's what we don't want. So, yeah, I take my fingernail right on the end and run down it from, nose to tail. And I usually, I'm pretty sensitive about it. So even if I do it a lot of times, and if I think I feel something, I'll run back over it a few times and just confirm, what sort of condition that running edge is in.
And in terms of the sharpness, is your your nail over the edge, is that a good indication of sharpness? Is that what you're looking at?
It's really good. Yeah. Yeah. You want it sharp enough to where it, without much pressure, obviously on your fingernail, it actually shaves off a bit of your nail. And if it does that, it's a pretty good indication you're in the sharp condition.
Okay, so I guess the next thing is we get our skates on our boat on the plank. I mean, it's pretty imperative, I guess, that those skates are parallel to each other. So maybe just from a beginner's point of view, take us down from a beginner's point. What's the minimum requirement you're thinking about in terms of how exact you want those skates to be parallel to each other?
Yeah, so what I do, with the runner plank is on a workbench. I flip it upside down and deflect it down. With my configuration, I think of it as, light air. Let's say you pushed off the starting line, jumped in the boat, and just ghosting along with no wind pressure. My plank configuration is flat or zero. If you ran a string from the chalk mounting surface to the plank across to the other end, the center of the plank would just touch it. So I upside down on a workbench, I deflect the plank into that same configuration. And then I've got a dial indicator with a rod that I can run from one cutting edge of the runner to the other. And I typically, I don't get so sensitive out to the very ends of the runner because my general profile is pretty rounded, lead in and lead out or exit. So I generally just measure, where those feeler gauges, where we check for crown is to the straight edge. So, on average, 15 or 18-inch runner profile, that's where I'm checking alignment. And I'm looking for alignment within 10 thousandths of an inch over that profile. So I hear a lot of people talk about, they get within a thousandths of an inch or whatever, but with temperature changes and, slight configuration changes, my rule of thumb is if I'm within 10 thou plus or minus, I'm pretty happy and I consider that a usable configuration.
Okay, now getting to the plank, like, I mean, I know myself when I bought my DN, I mean, I was pretty naive. I come from the laser background, Hobie 16, strict one design classes. So I bought a DN thinking, oh, okay, a DN is a DN. But I guess when you buy it, you really got to check to make sure that it fits you right in terms of the plank. So when you're measuring up a plank, how are you doing it, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, well, one thing just to jump back to, speaking of the plank and the runners, matching or fitting properly, I think one thing that's real critical, particularly if you're just getting into the sport and you bought a used, boat, is the fit between that runner body, if you will, into the chalk section. That's real important because oftentimes you'll see, a mismatch between that fit. And it's just one of those simple areas you want to have that fit quite nice. And there's different ways to shim those. People have used Teflon tape and other sorts, or thin fiberglass sheet or phenolic sheet or something of that nature. But the fit, and that's one of those good pre-season checks, especially if you have a new plank, a new set of runners, a new configuration that's new to you, is making sure that fit between the different components of the hardware fit properly. And the nice thing about the DN is everything is component, so you can adjust, customize different parts to get it all to fit together. But that's real critical. And then getting onto the plank deflection, it almost, to me, in the technical form, it lends itself to a little bit deeper discussion into the whole package, right? Because the whole boat needs to work in harmony for the best performance. And what I mean by that is it's easy to get out of balance from the standpoint if you have a soft mast and a stiff plank, they're really not working well together. The energy from the wind and the hiking and leverage, all the things, then is primarily going into just the mast configuration if you're soft mast, stiff plank. So it's really important to have a balance between the two components, the primary, components that are deflecting, the mast and the plank, and those really need to be a set configuration working together.
So you're saying you can't have a mismatch. The soft plank is not going to make up for stiff mast, or?
That's right. Yeah, it won't work very well, both from a boat performance as well as a control on the ice scenario, which obviously is important to get yourself around the racetrack safely.
And that, now I know there's a lot of really good ice with yourself, but just for somebody that's just bought his boat, and he wants to check and see if his plank, he thinks it's the right deflection for him. Well, what's a quick and easy way for him to do that?
Yeah, general rule of thumb is I think for the most part, folks are operating between like 1.5 inch deflection to 2 inches of deflection, as just a general rule of thumb. But it, like I say, it really, that'll just get you on the ice, but then you got to dial in, to a specific configuration with the rest of your boat.
And that's just with standing on the plank and measuring how much you deflected it?
Right. Yep. Yep. That's just a quick, reference to see where you're at.
Okay. Now, in terms of hull alignment, how much importance do you put on that?
You mean the hull to
Hull
the
to
plank?
yeah.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's real important because obviously we sail on both port and starboard tack, and because the boats are going fast and the steering input is so sensitive to angle that any asymmetry between the plank and the hull configuration will make it a very uncomfortable boat to sail on one tack or the other. So a pretty simple geometry check with the plank, the hull mounted on the plank, and then a tape measure to the bow to the one end of the plank. That's a satisfactory check to get you in the game.
Okay, and I'm just I know Dave Frost is on here. He had a question about that hull alignment. Dave, you wanted to come on and ask a question about hull alignment to Matt there?
Yeah, man. Oh, hold on a second. I've got two devices going because my question was the suspension up front of the boat. My apologies. Let me kill this. My question was the suspension on the front of the bow. I know you run a fairly stiff front end. What's the benefit and pros and cons of that?
Yeah, I did that originally. I was looking at one of my early preseason checks. I was looking at the configuration of the boat. When it was fully loaded, the stern was quite low, of course, with plank deflection, and the bow with the original spring Sarnes configuration, it was bow really high. So I was looking to do everything I could to lower the front of the boat to get the whole boat in a little bit better aerodynamic alignment. So part of that solution was, taking the spring out on the bottom, doing a high density rubber suspension, if you will. So there's still a little bit of give there, but it loads or lowers the bow of the boat in a static condition, even pre-loading. And so the boat's just real consistently aligned a little bit better with the, for aero package. That's the basis of why I did what I did.
How's that, Dave? Did you have a follow-up question, Dave? You wanted to ask something?
Oh, my follow-up question was for a gimpy old man who's trying to get off the line. I notice the fast kids around me always pop off real quick, and I can get the speed, but it often takes me a little while. What's that trick to a quick start?
Yeah, I think actually it's a great topic, and it's one of the things I like to practice a fair bit of, especially early in the season and refine it throughout. But it's really part of the fitness program, I think, and then also looking at the your technical phases of the starting line. But short of long is, I think, as Mike and I spoke last year about starting technique, is really off the starting line, having your boat set up at a proper angle to where you get initially that free VMG, right, straight up wind, and using both legs, or that first phase of the start, being able to get the first initial push and the next three steps. If you get that set up properly, then when you begin to bear away, you've got some room below you. And so even if you're not the fastest guy, you've developed some room to where you can allow the boat to sail into acceleration mode, even if you're not the fastest guy off the starting line.
And one of the things we talked about, or you talked about last year, Matt, was in terms of powering up the boat. Sometimes that sheeting in too early kind of has a negative effect there.
Yeah, I think it's so critical, setting the directional alignment of the boat on the starting line, and you'll notice to that most of the top guys, they set the boat up. There's a little bit of wind shift. If I'm on a little bit of a lifted, I'll just push on the side of the hull, and the runners will just skid sideways a little bit and get it angled more into the wind. Because the last thing you want to do is take a step off the starting line, have the boat hike, now you're chasing, right? You're trying to catch up. So the initial first push off the starting line should be, only about, 25% powered by the wind at that point. And now you can bear away, because the good thing with the ice boat is bearing away is easy off the starting line. Heading up is impossible, right, while you're standing or running. So having that initial setup and being willing to adapt as the wind shifts occur, right before the flag drops.
So just while we're on that topic, Matt, another question came in from Dave Glick. I don't know if Dave's out there, if you want to come on, or I can ask for you. I'm not sure if Dave. So the basis of Dave's question was he talking about powering up the sail, powering up and powering it down. He wanted to know that when it gets windier, he's lowering the sail and loosening off his forestay and without changing his side stays. And he's wondering if that's a good route to go to power down a bit in the higher winds.
Yeah, I'm operating identical from the stand. Actually, my side stays are not adjustable; they're fixed length, and so I've gotten into a configuration where 90% of the time, I would say, I'm only adjusting the sail height on the mast, and that's really adapting to changing wind strength or different sails that I'm using, depending on ice conditions and wind strength. Even at this point, forestay adjustments are pretty minimal that I'm contending with. But yeah, I've got the same approach, and that's really, once you have a refined program, mast, plank, everything's in harmony. I'm not moving the plank fore and aft unless it's real extreme conditions, of course, which we definitely see in ice boats. If it's real soft ice in the spring or something of that nature. Or really cold and snow on the ice. But in average conditions, my plank is one click back from all the way forward on the standard hollow plank fittings, and side stays are fixed, and I'm adjusting the sail height depending on conditions. And exactly what Dave's saying is, in a little bit of breeze, more breeze, you can lower the sail down, close that gap down between the boom blocks in the deck of the hull, because you have more natural power from the wind pressure to bend the rig out. So you don't need that added compression of the main sheet to initially bend the rig. In lighter air, obviously with a little bit more room under the boom, with the sail a little bit higher, you can induce a little bit of mass bend at times, and you can use that around the racetrack in different conditions.
So is the thinking of lowering that sail, is that something like the same idea like the deck sweeper? They've gone to the deck sweepers with the A-cats and boats like that. Is that kind of the same thinking?
A little bit, but there's another factor in here because we're using these bendy rigs on ice boats. Is lowering the sail a little bit gets a little bit more sail area below the hound, and I think in one of our talks previously we talked about kind of that power triangle, right, between the hound, the tack, and the clue. And so when there's a little bit more breeze, I can lower the sail down into that power triangle, lower the center of pressure a little bit, and of course less sheeting required to bend the mast. And it's just a little bit different configuration. When you look at a DN sailing upwind or downwind with the rig bent out, from the hounds up is not doing a lot of work for you. Obviously a little bit of twist profile as well as the mast deflection. It almost creates an S bend, from a fore and aft look at the rig. So the real usable part of the sail plan is from the hound down.
Now, just getting back to our beginning of season and wanting to maximize our time on the ice, you have good ice. There's possibilities of breakdowns. What are things that you should be bringing on the ice with you to make sure that you're not going to waste a good day?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I go to a little bit of an extreme at times from the standpoint that I generally carry two complete programs around with me. So the ice is, it's so rare to have great conditions and go. I want no excuse why I can't get some training on the ice. So, but actually carrying with me out on the race course, I carry a pretty small kit actually. A runner bolt, extra couple tools, some pins and ring dings. But beyond that, it's, you're really looking at whether you sail into a crack with, a lured runner or mast or something of that nature. But on the ice, spare parts is pretty minimal.
Now again, you want to get as much ice time as you can. And I think I remember reading an article about you when you were younger. It didn't really matter. You sailed on rough ice, snow ice. And how important is that just to get time on that boat? Like you don't always have to look for perfect ice, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I was blessed to, grow up in Bay City, Michigan and, sailing with my dad and Jeremy Goujon. I remember, when we first got into it, we sailed every weekend. And now, looking back on it, we sailed in just horrendous conditions at time. But we learned so much and we got, time in the boat and, just running through all the different scenarios. And, obviously it's good awareness, just mentally seeing how the boat reacts in different conditions and, both ice and wind and the whole deal. So, it's part of my prep to big regattas is really that last 4 weeks before a Worlds or North Americans. I'm solely focused on time in the cockpit. I'll almost drive to wherever I need to go to get time on the ice and sail, because it's that final refinement mentally and physically that you really need to be able to adapt to whatever the conditions are going to be. So a little bit tougher for me these days being in San Diego, but I think it is a real critical part of the season prep, if you will, especially for big events.
And I think you would probably agree with this. Like, you don't always need a big surface of ice to maximize your practice, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, time on the ice is time on the ice. The one thing you do have to be real conscious of, I think, is oftentimes, we'll sail on a small race course or something, and today I'm just right conscious to not tune my boat for those small race course conditions. At that point, I'm just looking to get seat time And, if I'm really prepping for a big regatta or something, I'll try not tune myself out of being competitive on a big race course. Cause we know at a Worlds or North Americans, you're on a mile plus course, generally good conditions and 3 laps. So you really got to make sure you have boat speed on a big course, but any seat time is good. It's just being conscious of what you're intending to get out of that training session.
Okay, so it's all great to have all your gear ready, but I mean, a big component of that is having your body ready also. So, uh, what goes into your physical regime there? What body parts are you working on? What type of exercises are you doing to get you in sailing shape?
Yeah, I like a lot of cross training type of activity. In recent years, I've really gotten into a little bit more endurance stuff like cycling, which I think has brought my capabilities to a new level, just from the standpoint of being able to deal with the demands of a longer regatta or bigger event. Not getting tired is really a big deal. Um, I think because the starting, in ice boat racing is so critical, I do some, leg workouts that are specific for getting off the starting line, some squats, and it can be simple activities. I've got an exercise ball and I'll lean it up against the wall, put my back to the ball, and I can do squats, in my living room, and it's quite effective. So it doesn't have to be, super sophisticated, but it does need to be focused and intentional over some time. It's one of those scenarios where you can't physically prep in the last week before the world championships or something. It's something that you have to have a plan to execute. And that's why all my sailing, I try to break it down into seasons or phases, and, sort of a pre-season, the core season, and then the post-season. And I'm looking to extract, specific things out of those different phases. For example, preseason is really physical fitness, um, building or testing or tuning any new equipment that I want to try. That primary season phase is really time in the boat with my race intended equipment, so that I'm getting my head wrapped around any finesse required, any special tuning, any adjustments that I want to make. And then that postseason, I really take advantage of everything I've learned through those first 2 phases, and then I go at it again with another experimental phase, if you will. And whether it's sails, mass, runners, anything of the like, I try to throw that in the mix. So it's just being intentional with what I'm trying to prepare for, and then not getting outside those boundaries in that given phase of time.
Now, in terms of also exercise, what do you do for your neck? I mean, that's obviously some, for ice boating anyways, in particular. Is there any specific exercises you do, or?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's probably the single toughest thing physically ice boat racing is it's muscles that you just normally don't engage on a day-to-day basis. So, I do, leading up to leaving San Diego, if I'm heading to the Midwest to do some sailboat racing on the ice, I'll lay on my back, watch a little TV, and I'll do some neck ups. And the one thing I would caution people to do is don't get out of control in that, because don't think you need to do 200 counts of lifting your head up to watch TV. It's 20 times is good, and you do that a little bit over time, and it really makes a significant difference. And of course, there's nothing better than getting on the ice and sailing around. Usually when I'm back over Christmas or something, getting some time on the ice, it's about 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden you can sail around the race course, 3 laps.
So you don't use the bungee setup?
I don't use the bungee. I've never tried it. I've just stuck it out for a little bit of prep, and then a couple of days of sailing, and generally pretty good to go for the season at that point.
Now, any specific exercises for your arms with work in the sheet, or?
Yeah, I mean, I do a fair bit of sailing anyway, so that works out pretty well. One of the things I love about ice boating is you're laying down, you're physically positioned perfectly to pull on the main sheet, right? Laying down, you can use your legs at times if you need to. Obviously, your arms. I think hand grip is a big deal because obviously we don't have cleats on the main sheet. So anything that engages those types of muscles, whether it's arm curls or pull-ups, anything of that nature, engages that hand grip strength, and I think that's really helpful for ice boat racing as well.
Now, the other area of the body that tends to get stressed, or for me anyways, on the ice is my calves when I start sprinting with the cleats on. Is there anything you do pre-season to get those in shape, or?
Yeah, I don't know if you ever seen these, but there's calf stretch boards, and a lot of runners use them and things. And I built one of those for myself, and I use that. The other thing I do on the ice is because track shoes, spikes are made for sprinting in general. I use a pole vaulting or a long jump type of spike, and they have a little bit more heel on them, so you don't have so much angle, so much stress on your Achilles tendon and your calves. And then in between races, particularly at a big regatta, I'll take my spikes off and just put my boots on, and that's a huge rest for your calves and Achilles tendon.
Now, with this gig I have with Sail Juice, I get to talk to quite a few elite sailors, and one of the common themes is especially when you're talking to sailors that have had injuries prior to an Olympic event, or they're off doing an America's Cup and they're not getting to sail the boat that they want to campaign on, is visualization seems to come up big. And I'm wondering with you, living in San Diego and the limited amount of time you're getting to sail on the ice boat, do you incorporate that into your program at all?
It's a really interesting question. Nobody has ever asked me that before, but it's a great question. And I do a lot of visualization in my mind, and it honestly started when I was in track and field. I was a pole vaulter, and because that was so technical and so hard, you couldn't slow it down, right? So you had to really visualize the mechanics and the fluidity to get through that type of event. And we all love sailing. I love sailing. The competition side of it for me is really just a validation of the work you've put in. It's not the driver for me. So I've always loved to dream and think about sailing and all sorts of different things. And it's such a fun sport. It's such a fun activity that I do think a lot about ice boating in particular. Whether it's the perfect leeward mark rounding, getting off the starting line, that feeling of going around the windward mark and you bear away, and just thinking through all the different ways, the best VMG, getting through traffic, those kinds of things. So I find it extremely helpful. Honestly quite enjoyable, and it's part of what keeps me coming back, is just being able to live through it without even doing it every day.
So there's an old saying that it takes 1,000 hours to make an overnight success. I mean, really, if you want to get good at ice boating, I mean, you complement your ice boating. You do a lot of soft water sailing. How helpful is that? And what type of boats would you suggest would be the most useful if you wanted to keep in key shape for ice boating?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Finally materials and technology have allowed softwater boats to at least get in the game of ice boats. Historically, ice boats, there was just nothing like it, right? We sailed all sorts of things. Well, today I sail ACATs a bit. I've built several ACATs and foiling ACATs, and have raced those pretty successfully. And then over the recent years, I've really gotten into foiling international moth racing. And it's the closest thing to sailing a DN around a race course that I've been able to achieve when it's warm out. And I think that's really helpful. I mean, it's really helpful from a tactical perspective. having your mind in the race, and it's, when, crossings and DNs, are easily 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. And in the summer water sailing we're doing today, international moss sails upwind at, a little better than 20 knots and downwind a little better than 25 knots on average. So they're pretty quick today, extremely physical, very technical, a lot of fun. So international moth, I think, is probably leading the world in soft water, high performance sailing of any kind of fleet size. And then international A class, of course, is right there.
Well, Matt, I really enjoyed talking with you again. I know we have Deb Whitehorse with us as secretary of the class, and I want to get her on here for a couple of minutes just to talk about the upcoming schedule and anybody new out there that if they want to get part of the class and how to get involved. So we're going to give you a rest here, Matt, and I'm going to give Deb her a chance to come on here with us. I think she's still with us.
Yeah.
You're muted, Deb.
Tired, I'm frustrated.
There we go. All right. Hello, I'm Deb Whitehorse, Executive Secretary, Treasurer for the DN class. And we do have regattas on the schedule. Our first, the informal regatta, not sponsored by any class, but this is the Western Challenge. It's a great DN class favorite. Sometimes there's scoring, sometimes they're not. That takes place December 3rd through 5th. That's our first kind of unofficial regatta. Where? Best Ice in Minnesota, probably near the Ashby, Minnesota area, Western Minnesota. Location is generally announced a couple days before the regatta. Then we have a regional regatta that will take place in probably Wisconsin or Minnesota or the UP of Michigan, Western Region Championship, January 1 through 2. And can people please mute their phones?
That's exactly what it means. Good, Francis.
Let me down.
Okay, hello? So moving on, the Western Region Championship, January 1 through 2. And Matt, I understand that you will be in Michigan and hopefully be able to attend that.
I hope so. Yeah, it's one of my favorite events now because it's usually when I'm in town for the holidays, and it's the ice in early season in Wisconsin is usually fantastic.
Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing you. And then the DN class, we have a North American Championship scheduled in January, the 23rd through the 29th. Now that also could be another US Nationals non-ranking event. We're going to do something and we're deciding next week. So, but definitely we're having a regatta that week. And in a non-COVID year, we probably get about, almost 100 participants for that. The Michigan region is sponsoring the regatta, so they will be looking for ice in Michigan. If there isn't ice in Michigan, then we'll start looking where we need to. And then the Gold Cup World Championship is in February, towards the end of February, in Europe. We alternate years on the World Championship. So as far as I know, they're still planning on having it. And all the information is available on the websites, idnyra.org or iceboat.org or dniceboat.org. So that's what I know about DN regattas. Plus there'll be other regional regattas, perhaps the New England area and also the Central region.
And possibly even a Canadian championship also.
Oh, yeah, let's not forget that.
So just a couple of questions, Deb. So people that want to join the class, they go to that website, they get in touch with you and they join the class. And joining the class, you put out it's a quarterly magazine. Is that right?
Yes. Yep, that's called Runner Tracks. And then we also, it's available online in a magazine format. And it has technical articles, regatta recaps, a lot of great photography. We're really lucky that photographers have been very generous with us. Gretchen Dorian, Kathy Fernbach, Sean Heavey, and I'm probably skipping people who Peter Johansson always share their photos with us. And I think the photos really help tell the story in the videos. Then we also publish a yearbook, an annual yearbook that has our regatta championship history. The North Americans, I believe, started sometime in the 50s, and the World Championship began in Gull Lake, Michigan in 1973, I believe. Then we have the specifications of the boat are online and in the yearbook. And then we do keep our dues reasonable for $27, which is what, going out to lunch these days. You can join for a year. And if you want any of the publications, they're available for purchase at a nominal cost.
Yeah, and they're fantastic, the publications. I've had a couple of them and they're very professional. Well done. And just to clarify, so that the first event, the Great Western Challenge, you don't even have to really be a member. It's just basically show up.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter, like DN, if you got an older DN, newer DN, it doesn't, everybody welcome.
Yep. Run what you brung.
Mm.
Yeah, everybody welcome. It's a great event to kind of introduce yourself to the sport, meet people. Everyone's trying out, doing a lot of testing. It's very informal, very relaxed, very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that was the first event I went to and it was very enjoyable. Well, I appreciate everybody coming on tonight. I don't see any other questions. I don't know if anybody wants to come on and have another question with Matt. Well,
I had one question to ask. Somebody emailed and wanted to know, Matt, what brings you to San Diego?
That's a good question. Work naturally, sort of chase the employment around, I guess, as you will. San Diego, it's a love-hate thing for me because I deeply love ice boating. But yet there's such amazing sailing in San Diego, and what a place to live. So it's tough to live both worlds, honestly, but ice boat racing, if no one's tried it, I highly encourage them to try. And speaking about all the regattas coming up and things, I would highly encourage people to get out scrub race. There's nothing more fun than just roaring around the race course, learning, asking questions. The fleet, all the people involved are fantastic, super helpful, and you'll learn a ton. You don't need you don't need to enter a regatta to enjoy it or get exposure to it. There's a lot of weekend sailing all around the Midwest, and everyone should try it at least once.
Yeah, find a local club is, I didn't mention that, the importance of local clubs. Like I'm in the Ford Lakes Ice Yacht Club, and when we have conditions, we race, and DN class is definitely one of our, racing classes. Matt, one thing I'd like to ask, getting a lot of inquiries from moth sailors in Europe that are kind of figuring out that DN sailing is good training for them. Have you heard this as well? I got 2 Australians contacted me this week.
Yeah, I mean, every chance I get, I talk about, the ultimate sailing is DN ice boat racing, and that, moth sailing is the next best thing. And so I think the focus on this kind of high performance sailing, it's kind of ironic, right? Because ice boat racing has been around for a very long time, and this type of high performance softwater sailing is really just coming to the forefront now. So I think it's just a natural attraction at this point for anyone into high performance sailing to be looking at ice boat racing. So yeah, I suspect that flow of inquiries will not slow down as time goes on.
On that note there, Matt, one of my last interviews was Glenn Ashby, and that's on his bucket list. He says he's coming over to do some ice boating. So we look
Yeah,
forward
that'd be
to that.
good. He
Yeah.
should.
He should. So I do have a couple last questions here, Matt, that have come in. I don't know if I got the names right, but one person is asking, is a carbon mass essential or just recommended?
Yeah, no, not essential at all. I mean, what really matters is that, I mean, today, honestly, right, it's the only functional mast is a composite mast. And it's because we used to all build our own mast out of wood and things, and we broke them all. You know, Ron Cherry and team, and you know, Jeff Kent and all these guys came up with you know, some wonderful composite masts, and today there's lots of good options. And you know, certainly the pointy end of the fleet always gravitates towards, you know, whatever's the lightest, you know, newest thing, and refine it and evolve it. But still fiberglass mass, especially for someone getting going. I know some of the guys in the top of the gold fleet are still using fiberglass mass, so there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's really that it is tailored towards your program, you know, that combination between the mast and plank harmony, and how it sets up with your sails and thing. But no, nothing wrong with a fiberglass mast at all.
Okay. And another question here coming in is this gentleman from Sawdust Bay in New York has hull numbers 1818 and 1900, and the question he's asking, is it worth rebuilding those and getting them back on the ice? I guess pretty open question, but
Yeah, I think anything that gets you on the ice sailing around is a positive thing to do. I mean, the really cool thing about the DN, I think, is that it's made up of individual components that all come together that build this sailing machine. And the really neat thing about it is you can start out with a relatively old boat and upgrade components, build new components, and add to your kit, your package over time. So it's I think that's what's been so great about the class. You don't need to come in and necessarily spend a bunch of money, or you know, build the entire kit. You can really start out with parts and components. I mean, I think back to when my dad and I got sailing. That's exactly what we did. You know, we built some stuff and had some parts, and had, you know, we were lucky enough to be around some people that had some good equipment that we were able to use at times. And you know, just build your experience, build your kit, and move forward. So most important thing is getting out on the ice, having a package that you can go sailing with, and learn some things, and then build on top of.
and one other question coming in from Josh. I don't know if you're on there, Josh. It might be better if you come on and ask some. It's a little open-ended. So are you with us here, Josh? So you wanted to come on and ask your question?
I am, yep. Sorry for the background noise. I got my 3D printer running. So you talked about your profiles on your runners. Obviously there's different snow conditions, ice conditions. I mean, what do you recommend for someone starting out? And specifically like angles, and profile shapes of those runners.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I would before today, I was thinking about, you know, if someone were getting into the class, I mean, with what I know today, if I were getting into class, my go-to would be, and it's honestly what I use 99% of the time when I sail today, is 3/16, 36-inch long inserts, 90-degree angle, and 18 inches of profile. That's, I think with those, it covers such a vast array of conditions. and quite competitive at the same time. So what I like about them, 3/16, they're a little bit thinner. They're a lot easier to sharpen. They're a lot easier to take care of. You know, it used to be the standard go-to was, you know, a standard 30-inch Sarnes, you know, bull nose. But honestly, I don't have much interest in 1/4-inch runners at all anymore. They're just too hard to maintain and take care of. So 3/16 runner is wonderful, and you'd be able to use that throughout the entire season.
So when you say 18-inch profile, are you talking that 18 inches contacting the ice all the time?
No, that's with there's some folks. I think the class has some good drawing schematics of that, but on a straight edge, and then with some shims, you know, in measured to where they contact the straight edge plus the curvature of the runner blade would measure out at 18 inches.
Okay.
So
Cool.
it's a funny thing. It's something we had to do a long time ago, and somebody had a good idea. I think the business cards was the first go around of that, to slide in the ends, because it's so little profile or rocker that it's hard to describe what that is. So with some, you know, measurement gauge slid in from each end, it's something that we can all talk around in a common format.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so you good with that then, Josh?
Yep.
Okay, thanks for coming on. Anybody else that wanted to shoot a question? If not, we'll see Matt on the ice in hopefully a few weeks. Going fast.
Sounds great, Mike. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And if anybody missed this, it'll be posted up on salejuice.com, and hopefully we can have some more chats. Thanks again, Matt.